Hello dear brothers and sisters, I want to welcome you to a new Bible study. And we continue in Habakkuk 2 verse 5 and we call this study Drunk on Power. And that sounds familiar, right, for us nowadays. So let's dive into the study. Habakkuk 2 verse 5. Moreover, wine is a traitor, an arrogant man who is never at rest. His greed is as white as Sheol. Like death, he has never enough. He gathers for himself all nations and collects as his own all peoples. So let's dive in some background. Continuing our summary of the Old Testament history, we left off with the destruction of the northern kingdom of Israel by the Assyrians in 721 BC, while God protected the southern kingdom due to the prayers of Hezekiah. This period in the Old Testament history is called the surviving kingdom. However, after the death of King Hezekiah in 687 BC, his son Manasseh assumed the throne and reigned for 55 years. He was responsible for re-establishing local shrines, restoring the worship of Baal and Asherah in the temple, and sponsored the Assyrian astral cult throughout Judah. He was so zealous in his worship for the foreign gods that it's said that he also had sacrificed young children to Moloch. Later in life, Manasseh was captured by the Assyrians, and they put a hook in his nose, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. While he was in Babylon, Manasseh humbled himself, repented, and prayed to God for deliverance. Yahweh had mercy on him and reinstated him to the throne. Manasseh restored the temple to the worship of the Lord, but the people of the kingdom still worshipped the foreign gods. After the death of Manasseh in 642 BC, his son Amon became king and reverted to the worship of idols. He only lasted 2 years, as he was so bad that he was assassinated by the people, and his 8-year-old son Josiah became king in 640 BC. In Josiah's reign, he restored the temple, brought back sacrifices and the worship of Yahweh, and established a campaign to totally rid Judah of the worship of foreign gods. He was considered a very good king, as we can read in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. It was during the reign of Josiah that the Babylonians rose up in the north and conquered the Assyrian Empire by capturing their capital Nineveh in 612 BC. From there, they began their reign of conquest and terror. Okay, let's dive into some interesting points here. And first we dive into drunk on pride. Wine is a traitor, an arrogant man who is never at rest. In the previous verse, the verse told us that the Babylonians were puffed up, filled with arrogance, haughtiness, and pride. And you also probably have met many prideful, arrogant people in your life. And almost all of them spent countless hours building up their image. It was almost if they were drunk with their own success. The Babylonians were known for their wine and consumption of wine. According to this verse, excessive wine is like a traitor as it betrays the drinker, deceiving him into believing he's more important than he is. The Hebrew word for traitor, bagat, comes from the root cloak, as in cloak and dagger. Drunkenness betrays us by instilling a false pride and bravado, which led to their ultimate demise. It is ironic that we read about the demise of the Babylonian Empire in Daniel chapter 5. The first verse of the chapter reads, King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. And Proverbs 16:18 tells us, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. And second, drunk on greed. His greed is as wide as Sheol. Like that, he has never enough. In the Old Testament, Sheol is another word for the realm of the dead, the place where the spirit goes when one dies. This analogy tells of depths of the Babylonians never has enough because they are greedy. Like Sheol, the Babylonians are never satisfied. They consume but are never full. Jesus tells us in Mark 8 verse 6, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?
Drunk on power is the last interesting point, because this verse says, he gathers for himself all nations and collects as his own all peoples. As John Dalberg Acton famously wrote, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It was true for the Babylonians. They could do anything they wanted to their captives. They consumed nations and people like wine and wanted more. Jesus had a different view of greatness and power in Matthew 20, verse 25 to 28. Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Brothers, when people suddenly have money, such as winning the lottery, their values or their real values come out. When people gain power, they quickly reveal what they really think about others. C.S. Lewis once said, integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. We are told in Proverbs 10:9, whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. In the quiet of your own room, examine yourself. Are you a person of integrity? Do you act and think differently when you are alone? Or you know that no one is watching? The harshest words that Jesus had for anyone were those who were hypocrites. People who were false, people who put on a good show in public but were very different in private. Jesus describes them as whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. If you find that you have been fooling yourself, read about Zacchaeus, the tax collector in Luke 19. If find yourself drifting from your integrity, be like Zacchaeus. Repent and change your direction. Vow to make things right and allow salvation to come to your house. May God bless you in all of this, and we definitely hope to see you in the next video.